What's up, guys? This is Ben. Um, a few people on the Mirage forums had some questions about wiring up a 1.8 liter LS tact instrument cluster into a 4th gen Mirage. Um, so that's what I'm going to show you right now. This is my third one. It's my third 4th gen that I have put a tach into. And the first two I had were 4G63 turbo swaps. And I'll just tell you real quick, I don't have that stuff with me to show you exactly. However, I'll tell you exactly just kind of what's going on. This swap is fairly simple and very straightforward. So what ends up actually happening is you're just adding a couple wires. And you just need to have solid, good connections. I already have a few things off. I think most of you already know how to basically take the instrument cluster out, but I'll just kind of show you that anyway, just, regardless. So here we go. All right, so there is the cluster, as you all know. One Phillips head screw there, one Phillips head screw there. This guy ends up just, coming out, which is a little tough with one hand. However, up and over the steering wheel. Then you guys know it's, 2 screws up there, screw, and screw over there. Slide this guy out. Here, let me just put this down real quick. Sure, everybody knows how to take the cluster off. You just pull it forward, flip it backwards, and out she comes. All right, guys. Here's where we get in the good stuff. Let's see. Got a light on. There we go. Okay, so we have the B09 connector, the B12 connector. All right, so you just kind of wiggle this dude back and forth, and it's going to come off. Now, with a 4th gen Mirage, that's an automatic. If it was already a manual and it had a tach, then you're good. If it doesn't have a tach, well, this is how you do it. All right, here's the back. There is pin number 1, where my thumb is, right here. This ground is pin number 12. The tach wire, or tach signal input in, basically what your tach signal would be, is this white wire right here. It's pin 10. Okay, so again, that black ground, that is pin 12. Go over 2, and right there is pin 10. All you do is push that locking tab there and there. That one's a little bit harder to see. And then you just pull this lock up. Inside on the bottom, you kind of have to use, you can see it right there. There's a plastic piece on the bottom. You have to push that down. And, well, I guess if you're adding this wire, all you're going to do is just take this locking tab out with that release there, and the same one over here, and then you're just going to slide it in. These are the contacts that hit your instrument cluster. Easy peasy. This one, tach signal. Add that to there. I have it ran to this wire here going out into my engine bay, which I'll show you in a bit. You just kind of put that guy back in there. Now we grab this one out, same way. Alright, this is where it gets a little crazy. If you find a wiring diagram, which, I have access to wiring diagrams because I'm a mechanic, it's pin 48. So 1 through, I believe, let's see, 12, 13 through 25 in this connector, and then it starts at 26, goes all the way through. You flip this dude around, and you're going to see this black with white tracer, green wire, black with white tracer, yellow with red tracer. The yellow with red tracer is pin 47. You are going to add this ground wire to pin 48. This one right here. It's just to the right of the yellow with red tracer. So you have to add this ground because this is the ground for the tach. So you remember, you have your signal in here, and you have your ground for here. And then just to the back, you see where this yellow wire is running? That is the body ground for the instrument cluster, and I believe a couple other pieces in the harness itself. However, this is the body ground that you are from the factory. This is where it says it's supposed to be. So you add that ground there. Shove that guy back in. Make sure that you have good, solid connections. You really don't have to solder it. I mean, you can when doing splices, but I am a professional mechanic, and I will tell you that through the factory, we have factory butt connectors that are just heat shrink butt connectors. We do not solder. So with that connection right there, that's all you got to do. It's out of the weather anyway, so you're going to be just fine, and a good solid butt connector is fantastic. And that's the same thing I did with the signal wire. My wiring that I have that I added in for the signal and the ground is very good wiring from Audi. So yeah, and it's not terribly much that you need. You just have to have good wiring, good solid crimps and connections. I went a little bit further and put, fancy anti-friction tape onto it, just so that it keeps everything okay. And that's it. Now, as for your signal, the signal wire itself, the reason why a lot of guys can't get things to end up working. Alright, so if you're just doing this on a 1.5, which this is going to be my commuter for a while, so I'm not doing the turbo swap just yet. I'm going to actually try to make it safe before making a big power engine again. I got kids and stuff now. That's just kind of how it works. But your engine speed check connector for a 1.5 is right here. This is this white wire. This is the signal output of what goes to the tach. There are two white wires that come out of the distributors on these. One goes to the ECM, which has a lower voltage output, and the other one, I've seen some wiring diagrams that are slightly conflicting, that have, depending upon, I think, whether or not it's a California ECM or a federal ECM, it actually has that tach output going to the ECM as well, splicing off and going up to the tach. But pretty much what I ended up doing on all three of my cars is I ran my signal wire through the grommet for the speedometer cable. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's that yellow wire coming out right there. Just popped the grommet up a little bit, ran it out there, ran it over, crimped it onto the same connection, and it's not completely cleaned up enough to be fully secure, but it's doing the job right now. Now, as for the operations of the LS tach, the LS tach uses 4 pulses to have its engine RPM. Now, the DSM tachs have 2 pulses, minus the 1990s. which is where we get the DSM tacho filter. So those 4 pulses is what it takes to read the engine RPMs correctly. And let's see here. Let's turn that off for a moment. Hello. All right, so we have the 4 pulses that run the LS tach. You need those 4 pulses to run it properly. On a DSM output, there are only for their tachs, there's only 2 pulses for outputs. So what comes from that little module that's behind the coil pack. And that's why, like, if you run an Evo 3 tach, it only runs at half speed and your RPMs aren't correct. Oh, I'm sorry. If you run an LS car or an LS cluster with a 4G swap, it'll only run at half RPM. The tach inside of the Evo cluster runs at the correct RPM. But that's how you put those signal wires in. That's how you put those ground wires in. You make sure those guys are good. And as for the signal wire, if you're running an LS tach, you need that DSM tacho filter from the 90s ones. And I found out from Chris Pearson, he mentioned to me that there were some Sonatas and stuff that came with them as well. One that I'm going to end up looking into is from MSD. It's just like a different tach interpreter, but apparently it does the same thing as that little filter. And I'm going to end up getting one of those just so that I have new electronics, considering that all of our cars are getting super old. But the big one with having your signal wire going to there, that's how you get an LS tach to work. My other 2 cars, they both worked just fine. Those electronics were old. Sometimes, I mean, maybe 10% of the time, you may get a little blip from the tach itself, which, as I kind of think more about it now, the signal wire probably needs to be shielded, just because of like the magnetic field of the coils and that output, and just kind of in the location of where it is, because the only time that it ever, had a couple blips where the tach like would jump around a little bit, was under heavy acceleration. So yeah, I hope this helps you guys out. Feel free to message me on Facebook or whatever. And then I'm going to be doing some more stuff on Instagram. It's at Ben_Volution. Ben has a 3 in it, so it's B3N_Volution. Yeah, so you can follow me on there. Or, if you guys have any more questions or anything like that, just feel free to message me on Facebook. I'll put the link on that one page, on that one thread on the CSM page. So again, the B09 connector, you want to add your signal wire to pin 10, which most of you probably have done. However, you need to add the ground wire to pin 48 and have it properly grounded on the B12 connector, which is the blue housing one. And that's it. Make it go to a good signal, the proper kind of signal, and your LS tach is going to work just fine. So there, guys. Hope that helped.